I wrote The Conspiracy of Jack Frost in January of 2018, and I wanted to make sure his story was not just winter-based. Yes, I understand I was writing it in the winter, but I did not just want his experience to be snow and ice. I wanted to make sure that there was a change in the seasons, particularly because I hate the snow, I hate the cold. I am 100% here for the warm weather, and so to write a story that did not have warm weather in it, or just focus solely on that cold weather, was not a concept I wanted to explore. I did not want to live in the world of cold, especially because I'm from the world of cold all the time in this story. So I wanted to revamp Jack Frost's tale to make sure we had a very interesting twist on it, which is all about the weather. So I wanted to make sure that as we were writing the story, we got to experience summer, fall, winter, spring, and what happens when they crash and clash together. Now we know in real life, when the seasons change, there are certain things that come about. We're seeing those differences, and people behave differently and interact and react differently to what's going on based on the seasons and how they are shifting. I love watching the change from one into the next, and so as I was writing this story, I wanted to make sure that we really explored it, but in an accelerated timeline. So as I was creating the story in 9.5 days with only a handful of typos, yes, that was a fact, I did want to make sure I created this world that was not solely based on that ice. Now, Jack Frost is known for his work with the snow and with the cold, and he's nipping at your nose and all of these things. I wanted to make sure he had a softer side as well, and really show his progression. So I very much used the seasons to kind of show who he was as a character and who his girlfriend was as a character and their character progressions. I actually label my characters as different types of seasons. So I very much relate Jack to like a hurricane crashing around and causing all this chaos and damage and doing all these things, but having this great power, and really just a lot goes into his character. He's more of that winter. He's cooler. He's a cooler person. He is someone who is a little more standoffish. He is not necessarily someone who is super warm and like does all these things, and we learn as we go, because he starts out very strong as like that touchy-feely kind of guy that everybody loves. He's very popular, everyone's drawn to him, all the girls have crushes on him. We learn his personality is a little bit different than what we are perceiving earlier in the story. Now Genesis, his girlfriend, whose story is what actually propels this forward, she's the one telling his story. Genesis is more of that summer. She is there for growth. She's there to build people up. She's very much a people person, where Jack is a bit more standoffish, especially with certain people in certain situations. And so I wanted to make sure that we have different people representing the different seasons and those clashes and how they work together, how winter and summer work together, how they balance each other out, how we're getting different versions of different things depending on what's going on. And so I really wanted to implement the crashing of those seasons together to lead up to the big horrific weather machine collision. It's just one of those situations where this weather machine that is actively controlled by someone testing them goes out of control and is going to destroy everyone. It's already causing so much damage in the beginning of the story, but when it goes out of control, all these bad things happen. And so I wanted to make sure we touched on everything that could be and how it affects people, and then at the end we have to then deactivate this horrible weather machine that is destroying everyone. And so we touch on the different seasons. We always make sure that we've got different versions of it in here. What happens if our world progresses to the point where we've got chaotic seasons, where we do not have a full season of winter that we can prepare for? What happens when we only have a very short growing season in the spring and summer? What happens when people have to deal with this climate change and all the things that are going on and could potentially happen in our world one day should a series of really insane things take place? I loved exploring the differences in it, and the interesting thing is I made sure I wrote a lot of non-winter in it because I knew we were going to have a lot of winter toward the end. And I was writing this in January, in 9.5 days, the very beginning of January. So I live up north, where I lived up north, where it was cold. There's like 6 months of winter where I used to live. I'm not even joking. And I was in a snow-encased wonderland at that time. In fact, I have lived in such a pretty area that people have called it Narnia, and it was actually the inspiration for the song Winter Wonderland. It's a historical thing, and there's a lot of history in my hometown. And I was living in this snow-encased wonderland, and it was beautiful, but it was cold and I was miserable and I didn't love it, so I definitely wrote in my summer, and it was very weird writing warm summer, spring, even fall things in the dead of winter. And so I really had to draw on my life experience for the past 30-some years and really implement that into my writing because it was so dramatically different than the actual setting. And then fun fact, when I was writing that ending bit, where it was very, very snow-based, ice-based, very winter-heavy, it was not as wintry. We had the big storm, like the blizzardy storm, during the summer, spring, fall parts, the not so bad winter parts. During the winter parts, like, no, we're done for this week, you're good. You've got some snow on the ground, but we're not going to, like, winter wonderland you. So it was incredibly helpful to look out and not have the availability to write what I was seeing, which is something I do love to do when I'm writing, which is why when I'm writing things like my Siren War Saga or The Sinking, I would put up under the ocean cameras on my computer so I could experience and write about it. Sometimes I write weather into my stories, like with the Jaded Duology. When something was happening in the real world, I was also writing it into the book. The rain, the other stuff, it's a very interesting process to make sure that we get that in there as well. And we know with my retellings, I love to put really big spins on my stories. I will not write a story unless I have a huge spin on it. And so everyone knows Jack Frost is related to that snow, connected to the winter and to ice, and I wanted to make sure that I had a spin on it. Not only with that weather machine, not only with the sci-fi bent, not only with the bunker, not only with his girlfriend's perspective of his story and what actually happened with Jack Frost, but I wanted to make sure I changed up our perception of it as well. Yes, he is winter. Yes, he is the cold and ice, but he's so much more than that, and we get to experience that through the story. And I loved being able to write it, even though I am not a fan of winter. I am the biggest fan of Jack Frost, and I love being able to breathe new life into his story. If you've got questions on the conspiracy of Jack Frost, I want to hear from you. Get down in my comments. Let me know who's your favorite character if you've read it, no spoilers. And let me know what questions you have about creating this story or about anything inside of this story. I would love to get those answered for you. Hit the subscribe and notification bell. And let me know, what book should we talk about next? Every single week I'm dropping a brand new video behind the scenes of one of my many multi-time best-selling novels, and I would love to get your questions answered and tell you behind the scenes things that I haven't told anywhere else to my fans right here on the YouTube channel. So which book should I do a video about next? I'm taking your suggestions now. See you in the next video.